of degree information on materials and asphalt and pricing, and then what's new at CAPA and what's in store for the asphalt industry of Colorado. One thing that is a new development this year is will be co-presented here with Mike Skinner, our Director of Engineering, and Mike has a handle of the city and county market, a great resource to the industry, and he'll be a co-presenter with me here today. So I welcome you on to the call, and glad that you're on. And with that, we'll get started. As I mentioned, a great cross-section of participants, contractors, suppliers, consultants on our equipment providers, and affiliate and associate members, as well as the spectrum on the agency side, city, county, CDOT at the state level, and even FHWA. So we're glad that each of you are on. Here is our outline, and I'll close with just a discussion of what we see as new developments, and then resources and how you can best use the resources that are available through us and here at CAPA. Some of you've been around longer than I have, but CAPA, we are the industry trade association representing the asphalt industry of Colorado. From a membership standpoint, we are the largest numeric asphalt paving association in the country with 260 total members. We are not a chapter of NAPA. We're an independent state association, but our industry partners include NAPA, the Asphalt Institute, the Asphalt Pavement Alliance, the State Asphalt Pavement Associations, NCAT, the research arm of the industry down at Auburn University. For those of you who are wanting to grow in your professional development within the industry, AAPT, the Association of Asphalt Pavement Technologists, and here regionally, the Rocky Mountain Asphalt User Producer Group are all resources and organizations that we are connected with. In addition to that, CAPA, we're an advocacy organization, but yet technically and sound and focused, we administer the state-required technician and inspector certification program. We're one of only 3 asphalt pavement associations that provide that service in the country, Oregon and Texas being the others. We're also a primary focus or supporter of the Rocky Mountain Asphalt Conference and Equipment Show. Unfortunately, we will not hold it here in 2021, but it's looked at as the largest asphalt conference and program west of the Mississippi. We're also proud that we're now one of the largest state chapters of the Women of Asphalt. And so those are elements of CAPA. We're proud of our leadership, and there's the board of directors. Our executive board is shown here and includes new leadership. Mike McDonald, Kiewit Infrastructure is our president. Russ Larson, Elam is vice president. Ryan Yock from Martin Marietta and Ed Wells joined our executive board, elected here in December. Also, our board of directors is rounded off with these individuals shown here, new ones in red. And so if you look at this in our executive board, a number of both red and black in terms of the participation of our board, new blood, new ideas and new perspectives, and those that have been on the board a while that understand a little bit of how we have approached things and how we've gotten to the point where we're at. So we're proud of our board of directors and our industry as a whole. And here you'll see the logos of our producer and supplier members, very consistent from last year, with the exception of Holly Frontier, a refinery up in Cheyenne, is no longer in the asphalt refining market and business in Colorado and Wyoming, and are no longer part of the CAPA organization. The asphalt pavement market in Colorado, we have 66 production facilities with an estimated production in 2020 at 9.9 million tons. 2 new facilities you see showcased on the right, the Kiewit facility in East Denver and the Martin Marietta facility in East Denver that are new to the market. A majority of our producers also operate sand, gravel, quarry operations, and a majority of our producers are general contractors. And we mention that because in some states, Arizona, for example, a majority of the producers sell to contractors that then place the asphalt. So a little bit different here in Colorado as compared with other states. Our mission, to advance the use and quality of asphalt pavements in Colorado. Semantics, but asphalt pavements different than produced asphalt. Boy, if it's asphalt, we want to be in the middle of it, whether it's produced or all aspects of the market. All types of pavements, trails, intersections, highways, parking lot. You can see the IKEA parking lot. Cradle to grave involvement, design, construction, maintenance. And then a growing area of our involvement with the industry is asset management, pavement management, on the consulting and the agency standpoint. So a complete service. I think CAPA, I'm an engineer, Mike's an engineer, Tom has a career in engineering and on the materials testing and science side. So that's our focus at CAPA. So if you're new, welcome, and we're glad that you're on. Here's an example of CAPA involvement. Mid-December, we were asked to come up to a project, commercial project requested by a general contractor. Hey, help us understand what's going on here. We discussed performance, specifications, construction quality, and we're not there or we're not involved to be the king or the judge, jury, and executioner. We are there to provide a sounding board of ideas, provide information, guidance on best practices to support problem resolution. And so I'd encourage any or all of you to consider CAPA as a resource on your projects in the coming year. So real quickly, our first discussion here, 2020, a look back a year ago when we were at this webinar. Here's what we said, that our projection for 2020, looking at the 5 primary types of construction, city, county, state, commercial, residential, and other, represent the asphalt market in Colorado. We said we would be growing, that all sectors would be up, and that there would be increased volume of work in 2020. And I want to underscore the importance of the other category. In some states, other is miscellaneous. Well, in Colorado, we have E470, Northwest Parkway. We have work on our federal lands, whether it's Rocky Mountain National Park or Cottonwood Pass or some of those types of highways. And then airports, there's 64 municipal asphalt airports in Colorado. And then, of course, the military, strong military presence here in the Front Range. So last year, we estimated that in 2020, there would be 9.1 million tons of asphalt placed, which would be up from 8.7 million tons in 2019. What did 2020 play out? Well, here's what we consider the top 5 variables that led to the year we had. Number one is in March when COVID hit, we were, as an industry, the construction industry as a whole, identified as COVID essential. And they didn't say, well, if it's a highway, it is. If it's a parking lot, it's not. Construction's essential. And most agencies, city and county at the state, had their programs planned and out the door or in the queue to go out and wasn't impacted by the COVID restrictions. Third is that the commercial residential market stayed strong throughout the year. And then CDOT had several big capital projects that were the cornerstones of volume of work in our industry, and I'll speak to that here later in the webinar. And 4th or 5th, and very important, warm and dry construction season. If you go back to 2019, we had a wet spring, and that forced contractors to play catch up. And of course, if you get a dry fall, you can turn a good year into a great year with good weather after Labor Day. And so with that in mind, with all of that considered, the volume of work in our industry, you can see the blue graph, the blue chart on the right, based on collections and revenue into the association. There was a 15% increase in revenue from the assessments on produced asphalt in 2020 as compared with 2019. And so we back calculate the revenue based on the a fee or the assessment per liquid ton. We make some assumptions of how much RAP is in a mix and how much work is done by non-member or non-reporting market. And then we add that together and came up with 9.91 million tons of hot mix asphalt or asphalt pavement materials in Colorado in 2020. And these slides, this presentation will be posted online. And so if I go through it real quickly, we have a lot of information to go over, but I will provide that and make it available for others. So actual volume in 2020, you can see here, city and county market was up. CDOT was up 24%, going from 1.6 million tons in 2019 to 2.1 million tons in 2020. Commercial, residential, other, all program areas were up. And so we projected 9.1 million tons a year ago in 2020. There was an actual increase up to 9.9 million tons, a 15% increase over 2019. And from a look back standpoint, it is the highest year of produced asphalt in Colorado, going back as far as 2007, where we estimated 10.1 million tons placed that year. In terms of the industry at the national level, NAPA published their tonnage report and RAP and Warmix report 2009 to 2019. It's 1 year behind. It was published in November of 2020, or it's published in November of every year, 1 year delayed. And NAPA, in their report, the volume of asphalt, what was placed in Colorado is growing, and the volume of asphalt nationally continues to grow. NAPA estimated that the U.S. market increased from about 390 million tons in 2018 to 422 million tons in 2019, an increase of 7.7%. And if you look at the blue graph, that's DOT, red is other agency, the green is commercial residential, and you can see this spike in commercial residential growing economy from 2018 to 2019. So overall, the market here nationally continues to grow for our industry and in all three sectors. With respect to this graph, WMA warm mix asphalt or mix additive continues to grow. Looking at the chart on the right, the use of WMA in 2019 increased to almost 40% of total asphalt pavement tonnage was using a WMA technology. And so it's being used in all market sectors, and overall in 2019 had a 4% increase in production of asphalt with WMA technologies to 164.5 million tons. And so this is my favorite photograph of the use of WMA I-70 paving a number of years ago. The paver full of mix, but with the technology, it's not only used primarily as a compaction aid, but also you can see the reduction in visible emissions at the paving site. NAPA also reported the use of RAP continues to stay strong with respect to 2018 to 2019 nationally. It increased from 82.2 million tons to 89.9 million tons used in mixes, but the percentage dropped just a hair because of the increase in volume of overall produced material. So for 2019, about 98% of companies responding to the survey reported using RAP. So it's obviously very strong and stable part of our program here in Colorado. Recycling continues to be a very prominent key part of what we do. CDOT allows 23% binder replacement, the way they calculate the RAP, approximately 25% in all lifts, both intermediate, lower, and top lift, and 20% RAP is standard on all HMA, AMP mixes in Colorado. So our outlook for 2021 market conditions, based on two primary resources. The Leeds School of Business up at CU Boulder has a very extensive, robust process to come up with an economic forecast. They presented that in early December, and each market segment has a group of specialists, industry leaders that provide the guidance and the projection in each sector. Also, up at the Capitol, the Colorado Legislative Council comes up with their economic and revenue forecast, and they publish that in December of 2020. So both of these are available, and they're used for our reference here. The Leeds School of Business report has some national information, and as could be expected, the impact of COVID had a tremendous impact on our nation's economy. GDP was down. Gross domestic product here in 2020. The forecast for 2021 anticipates real GDP growth increasing at the pace the U.S. economy recovers from its largest percent decline in GDP since 1946. Government spending grew, but that was primarily because of the stimulus that was provided mid-year and the one that was just provided here. Consumer spending on goods and services generally accounts for nearly 70% of total GDP, and its decline an estimated 4.1%. So spending was down. And this next one I put in bold. I thought it was interesting. We'll come back to it. Is that the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in rapid shifts in consumer behavior. Goods, services, housing, entertainment, leisure, it's changing how we live our lives. But the bottom line at the national level is that the U.S. economy was greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and has not fully recovered. The impacts will continue well into 2021. So I took that whole report, boiled it down to 5 bullets. So if you bear with me, with respect to our industry and how it impacts what we do. The State Demography Office expects net in-migration, people moving into Colorado, of 35,000 in 2020 and 30,000 for 2021. The number of single-family permits issued in Colorado will total 26,000 in 2020, up 5% from 2019, and the after effects of COVID will result in a 7.7% decline in single-family permits in 2021. Here's an interesting stat. 2020, homes built along the Front Range accounted for 84% of Colorado's single-family permits. It's kind of like the breadbasket of the economy of Colorado is from south of Fort Collins or south of Colorado Springs up to and through the Fort Collins area. Multifamily permits are expected to decline in 2021 as units already underway are completed and in-migration slows. The committee forecasts 12,500 multifamily will be permitted in 2021, a 10% decrease in 2020. So you got a 10% decrease multifamily, 8% on single family, non-residential, and that's commercial. That includes remodel offices, schools, churches, retail. The rest are forecast to end the year down from 2019, and non-residential construction starts are expected to be down 16% in 2021. And finally, non-building construction, that's us. That's roads, bridges, drainage, water, transit, projected at $2.1 billion for 2020. 2021 is expected to be flat at $2.2 billion. If construction, two things that would impact that, a couple big water projects and the next $500 million tranche of CDOT bonds proceeds as planned, when we have every indication from CDOT that it will. So those are some key indicators with respect to the outlook for 2021. Let me come back to and emphasize that housing and the residential market. On the graph on the left, you can see multifamily and single family. You can see the increases, and here it kind of leveling off in 2019 and expected to come down even more here in 2021. And here on the right is the residential building permits by type. And on the bottom of this graph, you can see in 2021 down from 2020, multifamily down, total housing units down from 39,900 to an estimated 36,500. And here I sat through the 3-hour presentation. These 3 paragraphs really caught my attention, and that is how COVID is resulting in shifts in people's viewpoint from a housing standpoint. What do we mean by that? Well, many people forced to spend weeks at home are motivated to reassess their housing situation to accommodate home offices, learning spaces, or more room to spread out. There appears to be a shift away from dense housing with nearby entertainment and restaurants that made living in small units in urban multifamily buildings attractive. At least for the short term, this may benefit the single-family market. As of fall 2020, the inventory supply level for downtown Denver condos is much higher than for all property types at less dense locations elsewhere. The market for second homes is doing well due to the attraction of Colorado's outdoors, remote office workers not being tied to a short commute, and the desire of having a place to cocoon with families in mountain areas. So people are moving possibly away from the Denver metro area, adding on or expanding that second home up in the mountains, or rethinking their housing situation. Yesterday, the Denver Business Journal published this report that the Denver area housing market caps off 2020 with another record-setting month. A very low inventory, and this quote at the bottom says, "Well, this year has shown us that forecasting the future is nearly impossible. It is clear that we'll be starting off 2021 with historically low inventory, high buyer demand, and low interest rates." And it concludes with the quote at the bottom of the paragraph. "This could lead to another wild year of real estate with future unknowns of how the vaccine will impact human behavior." So that's still playing out in terms of the response that people have to the change in lifestyle because of the pandemic. Moving over to CDOT, the graph at the top speaks to their overall program. FY 21-22, CDOT's entire program, $1.9 billion, with over in the darker orange, $1.1 billion allocated, appropriated for capital construction. The impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic will weigh on the 2021 general fund revenue collections, and this is statewide, expected to be down 5.6%, and House Bill 1376 suspended the general fund transfer of $50 million to CDOT for both 2021 and 21-22. CDOT presented to the Joint Budget Committee earlier in the week and presented that they had a budget shortfall of $46 million relative to revenue because of the COVID pandemic. But earlier this week, also CDOT was notified, and the federal government, the president signed on December 27th, the next COVID relief funding, or the stimulus, that provides approximately $134 million to the state of Colorado with respect to transportation. And then with FY 21 supplemental funding, CDOT's receiving $150 million of additional funds that well offsets by $100 million the shortfall due to COVID. At the national level, and I thank Jay Hansen for providing the information on the next 3 slides. Jay is their Vice President of Governmental Affairs. It shows that the Highway Trust Fund and allocations to state stayed, if you will, very stagnant, the same number, FY 2020, FY 2021, $46.4 billion in both years. General fund transfer was down just a little bit, but as you can see here, the airport program remained flat. General fund transfers to the airport program remain flat. So at the federal level, very flat, stagnant funding levels, other than, as you see on the bottom, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act providing additional funds to the highway program. And this is Colorado's share of that. And you can see on the left here, the FY 2020 actual apportionment from the FAST Act, $590 million. The estimated apportionment in 2021 flat at 592. The actual obligation limit at 512. The FY21 obligation limit at 512 plus what was announced early in the week, Colorado's share of the COVID relief stimulus funds at $134 million. And so what can CDOT use the funds for? On the bottom, can be spent by DOTs for just about anything, including share with local governments. What was also interesting in the Appropriations Act is asphalt-related research funds, $3 million, $800,000 for research on plastic in asphalt mixtures. And so when someone says, boy, what do you think of the use of plastic? Well, at the federal level, there is work afoot to at least evaluate it and consider it as a use for an environmental product. So at the state level, tonnage-wise, we get a projection from Michael Stanford and the Asphalt Pavement Program each fall of what the projection is for the coming year. And this includes primarily the surface treatment funded projects. It doesn't include the design build, the big CMGC projects, the maintenance work, and others. And in 2020, they projected right at a million tons. 2021, right at a little bit down, 40,000 tons at 940,000. We're still waiting for the actual tonnage to be, for 2020 to be documented. But here's our analysis of the 2020 CDOT market, broken down by region, and the 2020 surface treatment plan tons was around 990,000. The 2020 surface treatment actual tons that we tracked came in at about 1.2 million. And you can see the change that was up by just over 200,000 tons. And so if you combine that 1.2 million tons of the surface treatment program with the 6 following design bill CMGC or Senate Bill 267 projects, the I-70 Peak Beard Shoulder, US 50 Pueblo West just getting underway, I-25 Gap, I-25 North, Central 70 Powers, that puts you at 1.9, right at 2 million tons in 2020. And here are the 3 big projects up north on I-25, 50,000 tons, Central 70, we got a tour of that project coming along very well, 260,000 tons placed in 2020, and then the Gap. That project is moving along very well as well, 325,000 tons in 2020. One important but smaller element of the CDOT program is supply at the plant, or the CDOT maintenance buying material. 8 different maintenance sections, and their financial year or fiscal year is November to July, July to November, and roughly they budget 130 to 150,000 tons per year of supply at the plant material. And so here's the bottom line graph for 2021 is that in 2020, we estimate in all those 3 areas of CDOT, the surface treatment funded projects, the other projects, and maintenance, right at 2,139,886 tons. And that's dialed into the nearest ton. That's great. The CDOT projection for 2021 is 32 surface treatment projects, 6 design build, CMGC or 267 funded projects, the I-25 North continuation, I-25 Gap continuation, Central 70, the 550-160 connection in Durango, South Santa Fe, and the US 50 Purcell continuation. Those at 750,000. The COVID relief, which is the 150 million that I spoke to earlier, somewhere between 100 and 150,000 tons. CDOT maintenance at 120,000 tons. And part of that is Region 1 is having a pilot program this year to contract out for their paving services, and around 1 million, but that's included in there. So we're projecting CDOT 2021 in its entirety to be right at 2 million tons, and this represents a 6% decrease from 2020. Still strong, still the highest total in 10 years or more, but just down from the projected final number for 2020. A couple projects I want to focus on in a little bit of detail is one of the special projects was this US 85 South Santa Fe Corridor Improvement Project. This is a Douglas County project. It's on a state highway with CDOT funds, but administered by Douglas County. This was originally designed in concrete, but Douglas County, providing 80% of the fund, switched to asphalt, recognizing the reduced construction cost and construction traffic impact. We've been told that this project will be coming out in June. 20,000 tons of SMA and 83,000 tons of HMA over the 2-year time period for that project. Another project is on Monday, the stimulus funds. CDOT has said the commission reviewed it and have identified shovel-ready projects, capital improvement projects, share to funds to local agencies. But of the funds, we understand that Region 2 will be spending $25 million on the State Highway 21, Powers Boulevard Research Parkway interchange, approximately 30,000 tons of mix, according to Jody Pieper at Region 2 Materials. Region 3, a couple of projects, US 50 Grand Junction to Delta, US 6 Fruta de Palisade. We'll still be looking at what the tonnage will be on that region of those projects. And then finally, Region 4, State Highway 385 Phillips to the Yuma County line south, 38,000 tons. Region 1, majority of their funds are provided to Dr. Cog. We're unsure what the impact will be. And then Region 5 was funding a project that was already on the list, but the funding pot of money changed with respect to that project. But in Region 5, they're moving forward with the 550-160 connection. And that's a project will continue, approximately 70,000 tons of mix projected for that project. So that rounds up what I wanted to present with respect to CDOT, 6% decrease from this year from last year. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Skinner to dive into the local agency market. Mike?
Thanks, Tom. So Tom has shared a lot of metrics with you that are relatively easily accessible to identify what the funding looks like for CDOT, what the size of the network for CDOT encompasses across the state, number of lane miles for the interstate highway system and the state highway system. When you boil it down to the local agency, that's a much more difficult entity and to try to develop those metrics across the state. So several years ago, I put together a project to try to get a handle on what do those mileage look like. And so here's a quick snapshot summary of what local agencies, cities and counties, are maintaining across the state. And this data mostly comes out of the CDOT HUTF highway funding reports. But in general, there are about 60,000 lane miles of asphalt across the state. CDOT's responsible for just under 23,000 lane miles. So while they may be the largest single entity agency owner across the state, they're only responsible for less than 30% of the network. It's the local agencies that are responsible for the heavy lifting, maintaining the roadway across the state. So it's an interesting perspective when you look at that. They are the breadbasket of part of this industry. How are those miles distributed across the state? We've got the 4 orange triangles here, and those represent the MPOs or the municipal planning organizations, the major ones across Colorado. Over on the western slope, we have the Grand Valley MPO. That's Grand Junction, Mesa County, Palisade, etc. And you can see their mileage. The North Front Range is Fort Collins, Greeley, Longmont at about 11,000 miles. The Front Range MPO is Dr. Cog. They're the big dog on the list at just about 30,000 lane miles in the Denver metro area. Pikes Peak region is El Paso County and Colorado Springs area, and then finally down in the Arkansas Valley MPO, that's Pueblo County, Canyon City, etc. So it's interesting to see where our miles are and how much our local agency is responsible for. Next slide, Tom.
Mike, you have control.
Oh. One of the things that we do here at CAPA on an annual basis is to track local agency ballot initiatives that we see on an annual basis that help fund or maintain the sustainable programs for their, whether that be road and bridge programs at the county or street programs. And there were two successful programs that passed this year that we were happy to see that CAPA supported technically and financially. Adams County, their issue 1B, removed the sunset for their continued sales tax, 0.5% sales tax for their infrastructure program. And the great thing about the Adams County issue is that a portion of those funds stay within Adams County, but then a portion of those funds also go out to the individual municipalities within the county. So that's additional funding for Commerce City and Westminster and Aurora, et cetera. And then the city of Greeley was also successful with the continuation of a food tax that they've had up there for a decade plus, that is committed to their roadway infrastructure program. So that is something that we keep an eye on every year. Agencies that look at developing their sustainable funding programs. One of the ways we track that is this is a program I put together starting back in 2015, and we're happy with the response that we've seen. You've seen how the program has grown. In 2015, we had 27 agencies respond. This year, I'm up to 95 agencies that are responding, and this is a one-page survey that I sent out 3 weeks ago to all the local agencies across the state, asking them what their condition statement looks like and what their funding looks like for the upcoming construction program. And when we put this data together, it becomes a very powerful tool that helps us with some of these economic forecasts, but it also helps individual agencies measure their individual performance, and it keeps them accountable for their citizens. And then we're also hearing within the last several years, it's become a very strong tool when they make presentations to their elected officials, how they're doing. The power of this document is the volume of mileage that it's representing now, over 62,000 lane miles. In this document, we're representing 92% of all the local roads that are across the state. We don't have response from all agencies, but 92% of the network across the state is there. This is what the document looks like. It's available for free download on the CAPA website. I am putting the finishing touches on the 2021 version as we speak, and we'll probably put that on the CAPA website early next week as a few agencies continue to trickle in. But the takeaway on this is the purple number in the middle, that dollar per lane mile, and this allows agencies to do an apple-to-apple comparison of how they are funding their program versus other programs, and then the colors, the red to green, are what they're reporting in their PCIs. So those two metrics, the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, and the dollar per lane mile, those are the numbers that we're hearing that are really becoming useful in sharing with the local elected officials. Some of the summary analysis that we pull out of that report is to take a look at an aggregate number of what does the road and street maintenance program look like. For 2021, we're projecting $325 million, and this is the data that's reported from these agencies. So these are approved budgets. These are the mill and overlay programs across the state. We're looking at over $300 million for 2021. And then the capital projects are approaching $360 million. So when we combine that, we're looking at statewide for just the local agencies at $680 million worth of work. When you combine that with the anticipated work from CDOT for their 2020, if we talk about agencies, CDOT and the local agencies, our industry is rapidly approaching the $1 billion mark. Just for agency work. That doesn't include any of the commercial, residential, development, private work, just agency work. That is an astonishing figure when you put it in that perspective. We're at the $1 billion ceiling there just for agency work across the state. Earlier this summer, as we were starting to work our way through COVID and agencies were starting to get a handle on how they were going to address revenue gaps for 2020 and impacts for 2021. Some initial studies were put out, and you can see the date here. This top study, this came out in April of 2020, and some of the early comments that are summarized in red down below is that this is what agencies thought, the local agencies thought they were going to have to do to address their revenue gaps with COVID. And most of the counties and the municipalities were proposing that they were going to delay capital projects. If they were designed and hadn't been let yet and contracts had not been awarded, they would delay the award of those projects, and they were going to delay equipment purchases. Those were the initial kind of knee-jerk reactions to how are we going to address these revenue gaps moving forward. In the middle of the slide in blue there, you can see the difference between counties and municipalities based on sales tax revenues and the revenue gaps. The reason they're not the same is because municipalities are much more reliant on sales tax revenue for their general fund versus counties. Counties have a stronger reliance on property tax, home tax values, and that's where a larger portion of their revenue comes from. So they were not as impacted because during the COVID pandemic, property taxes weren't affected like reduced sales tax when things were shut down. So that's the difference between the cities and the counties. Why was one? And then the last analysis that the Colorado Contractors Association put together here in June, just as the construction season was up and running, where they were proposing, based on some surveys from their polling from their local agencies, that they were anticipating the 2020 program, here we just started a couple of days ago, a 25 to 50% reduction in that program. That was a kind of a drop the ball type statement where we expected to potentially see some major impacts to our programs moving forward. Based on the data that I've seen in the last 3 days of these surveys that are coming in, that was definitely a very conservative analysis, and we are not seeing program drop in that range, the 25 to 50%. I'll go through that and share some examples of what the numbers look like. But based on sales tax revenues in Q3 and Q4 as reported across the state, it looks like budget reductions will be closer to the 5 to 10% reduction as opposed to the 25 to 50, significantly different. And that is very good news for our local agency analysis. One thing that they published on the Western Slope that was interesting that I thought I'd just share with you for a minute here is an economic forecast that comes out of Colorado Mesa University that looks specifically at Western Slope analysis, and these are unemployment statistics. So if you look at what's highlighted in green, this is February 2020 for 4 different counties there: Eagle County, La Plata County, Garfield, and Mesa. And you can see unemployment in February was in the 2, 3, and 4% range. Then COVID happens, and what we have highlighted in red, you can see the unemployment spike up to double digits. Specifically, look at Eagle County. It jumped up to 21% because of their reliance on the ski industry and what happened to that in spring. Well, reason we wanted to show that high unemployment value rate was because now here we are in the Q3 statistics. You can see how quickly unemployment is rebounding on the Western Slope, and those numbers have dropped back down to under double-digit numbers. So we are seeing a very quick economic rebound on the Western Slope, and this is echoed across the state. Here's a snapshot of a couple of entities that I just wanted to highlight. When these surveys that we receive, when we can do a direct head-to-head comparison for agencies that submit year to year. And so I just picked out a couple of highlights to put on the graph here. And these are agencies that we can do a direct comparison for their budgets from last year versus their budgets this year, to see how do they fit in line with what those estimates are. And I'll only maybe talk about 3 of them here. I'll highlight Moffat County. There's an example. That's Craig, way up there in northwest Colorado. And so it's be careful when you look at these general numbers, because their county commissioners approved their overall county budget at an 8% reduction for 2021. However, their road and bridge department saw a significant bump up in funding. They got an additional $536,000 a month. That's significant for their program budget. They got an additional $500,000. So while the overall county budget was down 8%, they got a $500,000 bump in their mill and overlay program in Moffat County. Some of those funds were just shifted from their capital program to their road and bridge asset management program. So when we see that 8% reduction, be careful how you interpret that data. But The actual specific data will be provided in the report that we publish next week. One of the other ones that I'll share with you that's positive news is the City and County of Denver. Right before Thanksgiving, Josh Lapley, the Chief Projects Engineer for the City and County of Denver, shared that their Elevate Bond program is going to be pumping an additional $100 million into construction for their 2021 DOTI program. That's the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. For their, in addition to the budget that they have, that Elevate Bond program is new money. And then the last example I'll share with you down there is in El Paso County and the Colorado Springs area. Good news coming out of Colorado Springs area. The PPRTA, which is the Pikes Peak Regional Transportation area, they have their level for capital funding for capital projects, they've reported will not change. So their 2021 revenue capital spending is the same as for 2020. The City of Colorado Springs, Corey Farkas, who's the streets manager down there for the City of Colorado Springs, shared that they had record sales tax reported for Q3 and Q4 in the City of Colorado Springs, and those sales tax are what funds their 2C overlay program. So Corey reports as long as things remain to stay open, and that's another question moving in here after January 20th, what will happen with our change in president and how that affects the economy. But as it stands now, if things remain open, Colorado Springs, the City of Colorado Springs, their 2C overlay program will remain strong. And then the last piece of anecdotal information we have comes out of El Paso County themselves. While they have a strong capital projects, they are also seeing higher than average sale of development lots. This reflects back on what Tom was talking about earlier in that single-family residential home market. They're seeing a very strong market down there in El Paso County. In fact, they're seeing a record number of permits that are being requested and a record number of development applications that are being submitted for review at the county that, frankly, they've reported that they're unable to keep up with because there's such high demand. So we're able to look at some anecdotal information across the state and develop some general assessments, but those 29 agencies out of the 95 that we have a direct comparison, we had data last year versus data this year, it's almost a 50-50 split. 15 of those agencies are reporting that their budgets are going down. 14 of those agencies are reporting that their budgets will remain as is or increase, with a net revenue gain of about $14.5 million. So the trend is positive growth, but slowed, and that's reflected in our graph here. So if we look at our middle line there, the mill and overlay program, that's a bread and butter of our industry, and how it's a great performance indicator of what's happening at the local agency level. For these 29 agencies head-to-head, in 2020, they were funding around $98 million. This year, their program is up to about $101 million, showing a 3.5% increase in general trend. And for comparison, Pank, where did we see last year? We saw about a 6% increase in that trend. So the last comment I'll leave you with is at the bottom of the slide there is for our local agency partners across the state, we are seeing positive growth, 3.5%, but it's a slower rate. Things are slowing down from what we saw last year, where we saw about half the rate of growth that we saw last year. And the last thing that I share with our local agency partners is some of the trends and some of the things that may be coming up that we've already heard from early on in the year here. One is the recycled plastics. Tom mentioned that that's a funded effort at NCAT right now. We've heard it from a couple of agencies in the last 2 or 3 weeks. They've gotten calls and asked us about that. So we've developed some talking points and some preliminary support technical information that is available on our website that I've put together. And so if you have specific questions at your agency, please give us a call, and we're happy to do that. But we've just now published some information out there. In black, we've also gotten some questions about best practices for asphalt mixes as it relates to gyration levels, the type of PG binders, change in AC content, dropping of the AC content, getting more binder in the mix, etc. So we provide some technical resources and support to do that. And then the last thing is we value our partnerships with all of our local agencies across the state and provide several technical lunch and learn and funding effort resources to our local agencies. We get reached out probably 2 or 3 or 4 agencies a year that call us and ask us if we can help them or provide some information as it relates to their roadway funding efforts. That is an up-and-coming issue that we hear more and more about. So we have a great library of resources that are available for agencies moving forward out there, and we would welcome the opportunity for CAPA to work with you or to help you to develop a program. I think that's all I have I wanted to share on local agencies, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And so to kind of wrap it up and lead to our forecast for 2021, here's just a couple of comments. Asphalt supplier, 2020 was a great year. We expect 2021 to be good, but not as good as 2020. Remember, a 6% decrease in the CDOT market. Here's ARTPA published their annual forecast in December 10th of 2020. They're expecting a transportation construction market shrinking by 5.5%, almost matching what we estimate from CDOT. And then here, an equipment supplier, 2020, an exceptional year. We expect 2021 to be strong as work continues at material or military facilities, wind farms, quarries, and road construction, but more like 2019. And so from a wrap-up standpoint, 2021 materials projection with the 3.5% increase at the city-county, CDOT down 6%, and then using the forecast information on the commercial market, residential, other, that residential should say, that's a typo there, should be 2/3 of the 35%. So if the commercial is 1/3 of 35%, a 14% decrease, and the residential 2/3 of 35 at 8%, and 2020 was 9.9 million tons. If you add it all up, we're projecting 2021 annual overall market to be right at 9 million tons. And this is up from 2019, but down from the high water mark year of 2020. This represents an estimated 10% drop in overall market for asphalt materials as compared to 2020. Having said that, boy, there are things that could change. We're engineers with our estimates here, but that's what we're projecting for the coming year. Moving on to trends. And what are the trends for the coming year? Well, obviously from a political standpoint, there are public policy issues that impact the construction industry. They're listed along the right-hand column. Obviously, energy, oil and gas regulations. On the healthcare side, labor increases in the minimum wage, regulation, consumer protection, a number of them on the environmental, recycling, plastic, material selection, permits, taxes. The big one there was the no on 118, the industry position on that passed, and that will go into effect here in the coming year, and that's the Paid Family Medical Leave Act. From a tax on the transportation funding, the Gallagher Amendment may provide additional funds for transportation, and of course, as we mentioned earlier, the reliance on the Senate Bill 267 transfers are also very important. Marijuana, and of course, the requirements of DBE and the CDOT requirement there. I want to point out a couple in specific, and this is environmental legislation at the Colorado General Assembly, 2 bills that we were working through last year. We expect both of them to continue. House Bill 1265 is the Public Protection Air Toxins Emissions, commonly referred to the Anti-Suncor Refining Bill. And this would add an extra layer of environmental regulations requirements on that facility and other large facilities. It would connect regional air quality to individual facility operations, which is new, unheard of in many markets, and has the potential of restricting refinery operations and greatly expanding efforts to ensure compliance. And so this is something that has a potential of impacting the Suncor refinery and other major production facilities in Colorado. Senate Bill 2159. This was killed in committee on May 26th. It's expected to be brought back up by Senator Chris Hansen. This would have required CDOT to complete an environmental assessment of the global warming effect when using different construction materials. And when the author was told, boy, the feds don't have criteria, CDOT hasn't developed standards, it's like, well, they better get them. And so this is another bill that is in that environmental realm that has potential for impact on our industry. I also want to mention the rhetoric on reducing or eliminating fossil fuels. And I'll focus on the bottom part of this slide as it relates to the industry. Our industry, we're a fossil fuel, asphalt. 100% of all roads are paved with either asphalt or concrete. We are a fossil fuel coal. A fossil fuel is the energy source for cement. Cement is part of concrete. So all roads are fossil fuel based, and you can't wind and solar your way to fixing potholes and paving roads. So the idea on January 7th of 2021 to embrace the, if you will, elements of the Green New Deal and discuss phasing out or eliminating fossil fuels just from a heavy civil construction standpoint is, and I'll let you fill in the blank, it's premature, it's a ways off, or other. But that's something both at the state and national level is that issue of fossil fuel, and of course we have a key element there. So switching gears here is, and the number of agency people on the line, what do you expect on cost in 2021? And I always add this element is, well, is it liquid? Is it material, your HMA mix cost, or is it project cost? Three different costs. So when someone says, what do you expect for asphalt prices? It's, well, you're talking liquid, material, or project cost. Three different elements, but what impacts cost can be grouped loosely, roughly into these 6 blocks. Labor, availability of subs, how the payment schedule of the agencies, material, clearly aggregate asphalt, hours of work, or the friendliness of the agency to allow you to get in, get out, and complete your project, and then, of course, spec requirements, including DBE. The impacts, as we see it going into 21, wages, materials, COVID compliance, and worker safety. Employee benefits, the paid family medical leave, regulatory expenses, and permitting costs are all major items that need to be considered. One shout out to CDOT as they presented early in the week to the Joint Budget Committee their efforts to address efficiency and accountability and provide mechanisms to ensure that they're spending every dollar they get wisely. They presented their efforts to increase project transparency, to setting new spending targets, and doubling down on project management to ensure best practices so projects are adequately staffed but not excessive. And then finally, to cut discretionary costs. So that's efforts within CDOT. But one area that's very important from an industry standpoint is the liquid asphalt market, crude oil prices. And this was presented by the Colorado-based Business and Economic Research here in December. The graph of crude oil prices based on the West Texas Intermediate, Cushing, Oklahoma, on the last trading day of 2019, the price for a barrel of oil was $60. Prices were expected to be $59.25 per barrel during 2020. Since the third week in June, the price for a barrel of oil has been about $40. It approached $50 on December 18th. So you can see the graph, and here at the end of 2020, very similar to where it was at the end of 2019. One impact in the Colorado asphalt market is the closure of the Holly Frontier refinery up in Cheyenne that was shut down in August for renovation, and 2 renewable projects underway at their New Mexico facility. Holly Frontier ran the last barrel of crude through its Cheyenne facility in August. The refinery begins to repurpose the plant to produce renewable diesel, but they're no longer in the asphalt market. From a CDOT cost adjustment standpoint, we post the adjustment up here on the upper left. You can see the AC adjustment index monthly over 2020, and the percent change in index from 2020 to 2019 was a minus 60%. Well, why do we care? Well, in Colorado, the AC cost adjustment spec was changed in 2020. Went to optional from the previous mandatory 10% trigger versus the previous 5%, and the reference changed as well. So the result was this here, and that is nearly every contractor opted out of the AC cost adjustment, up or down, opted out in 2020. So this is probably the last year we'll show the CDOT AC cost adjustment information. But here's the bottom line, and we worked with our asphalt suppliers to develop these 5 bullet points with respect to the liquid market in 2021 in Colorado. There's ample supply available, even though there's reduced demand for petroleum fuels, and the Holly Frontier closure further reduces supply. Ample supply in Colorado. The second one, there's no known disruptions affecting Colorado other than planned, routine, scheduled facility maintenance. On the wholesale side, prices rose in December and January, and this trend is expected to continue in 2021. Some parts of the country are seeing upward retail price pressure, but not yet in Colorado. Thus, in the bottom line, 2021 asphalt prices are expected to be similar to 2020 levels. And of course, those of you who've been around for years know that things could change, I won't say on a dime, but very quickly depending on supply and cost dynamics. Crude oil availability, refinery capacity or reducing throughput when there's lower demand for petroleum fuel demand, and upsets or production problems, and of course, demand and supply. But that's our analysis of the binder market on the aggregate side. In 2020, the Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association estimated 52 million tons of aggregates were produced in Colorado. And this is approximately equal to 2019. The forecast for 2020, similar levels of production in Colorado as all regions of the state show continued strong construction level. The big issue on the aggregate side is this one here. Local zoning regulations and land development alternatives continue to have an expanding negative impact on surface mining. These issues are expected to continue and to cause new crushed stone quarries and sand and gravel deposits to locate further away from large population centers where the material is needed. And so that's just the reality. Part of the cost of doing business is where do we get our aggregates, and long term, the challenge from an industry standpoint of finding good crushed materials close by to it. So getting on my soapbox here, we've all heard of NIMBY, which is not in my backyard, and that's the viewpoint that many have that boy, we need it, but we don't need it close to me. Well, now we're hearing the acronym BANANA. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. And so the culture is being less and less interested in being located near our facilities, and something that we need to deal with and be aware of. And one thing that we're doing as an industry is strongly supporting a outreach within the industry. Here's a website called SAFE, a Coalition for Safe Asphalt for Everyone. And its intent is to provide information to anyone and everyone publicly to make informed decisions about asphalt and construction materials in your community. And here's an impressive statistic that we often share, is that while asphalt production has increased by over 250% in the past 40 years, emission from asphalt plants has been reduced by 97%. So we're proud as an industry, and we're proud of the advances in asphalt production. From a new development standpoint, there's a few stakeholder type projects. The Amazon Colorado Springs Distribution Center on track for 2021 opening. With that, 40,000 tons of asphalt or more. On the tollway side, E470 wrapped up a major improvement on Quincy to I-70. That was completed in 2020, and there's no word out of the Jefferson Parkway in terms of the completion of that. There was hot and heavy towards the tail end of 2019, but it's now on an indefinite hold due to environmental requirements. The Chimney Hollow Dam project up in Larimer County is moving forward, and that has an asphalt core to it, which is a hydraulic asphalt core, which will make it more of a specialty type project with on-site batch plant and on-site delivery. So that's not a project, but here's one of interest to the industry. The president signed back in August of 2020 the Great American Outdoors Act that will allocate $1.9 billion a year for 5 years to provide resources and funding to improve maintenances at our national park system throughout the country. So $1.9 billion per year, 5 years, nationwide, $9 billion. And we should see some in Colorado. It'll go primarily to the high-use facilities, Rocky Mountain National Park, one of them. And a fact sheet out of Rocky Mountain National Park is that they have a need of $32 million for paved roads and structures just in Rocky Mountain National Park. So we hope to see some of that money trickling into Colorado over the next 5 years. On the technical side, longitudinal joint density is and continues to be a focal point. The task force with CDOT has been exchanging information and drafts of revisions to the spec, and so we should see something developed and implemented here in 2021 with CDOT. I put this slide in, and this is one that is a staple, is if an agency comes to us and says, boy, we have $3 million of work, but we only have $2 million, what do you suggest that we do to maximize the dollars that we have? The first one is get the work out early, and that's the best thing you can do. Obviously, from a material requirement standpoint, RAP, being uniform and consistent with your material requirements is very important. Maximizing the opportunity to get in, get all the work done, and get out versus these tight windows of construction to avoid peak hour traffic is very important. And then no one wins if there's a bust in the estimate or if there's surprises on bid opening day. So those are our suggestions with respect to maximizing the limited road improvement funds. Yep.
Interruption here.
Yep.
Question, do you think the way global warming is affecting us here in Colorado, it will become a factor later down the road? For example, less snow, warmer temps, less chemicals on the roads, which typically leads to maintenance.
You know, everyone has their opinion on global warming, greenhouse gas. It'll come down to what the agencies will require. And I'm confident at the national level, the federal highway, as they will implement federal regulations, will partner with industry and implement the requirements in such a way that it makes sense and that they're producible, economical, and available. And we've been down that road before. It's not the first time. In the mid-90s, the scrap tire mandate. It was a good idea. It was mandated, and then there were questions on, well, wait a minute, what about the impact on performance, on quality, on cost? And so then there was a lot of rethrottling of that mandate. So with respect to the future, I think we're an environmentally conscious society. Colorado is more so than other states. And so if it's not done, that's not a prerequisite. Let's blaze the trail type of attitude many have in Colorado. So I think it'll come down to how the feds develop the standards and then locally how Colorado DOT implements the criteria on any of the requirements that we have. So on that environmental standpoint, sustainability, when someone says, what do you have to say for yourself, asphalt? There's 4 or 5 things that would contribute to that LEED credit at a facility that is being built with LEED requirements. Warmix or WMA, RAP, if we do it right and it'll last forever, perpetual, and of course porous to reduce the need for stormwater runoff. One thing that I'd be remiss if we didn't say is safety. Statistics continue to grow in terms of fatalities, in terms of the importance of safe work zones, especially during night paving. The frequency, severity of work zone accidents continue to increase at an alarming rate. You can thank your cell phone for part of that, and texting and driving. Our safety council is up and running, sharing best practices and collaborating on implementing new innovations in work zone, and that'll be a focal point in the webinars that we have in lieu of the paving conference this spring. So from the final area I want to go over is the training, technical resources, and professional development opportunities within CAPA. Our marketing program and our board provides robust funding for us to do what we do. In fact, at my desk today, our membership directory came in the mail, and so fresh off the press, each of you should get this within the next week or two. We do 2 magazines, one in the spring as inserts to the Public Works Journal to share what we do, and our intent is to promote asphalt, promote our members, and promote our industry. In 2021, we're expanding on a social media initiative where not only do we have a Facebook site and Facebook here, and then here our website, but also expand the use of our e-newsletter, and then expand our involvement in LinkedIn and Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And some of us old timers are like, why in the world are we doing that versus those younger members of our industry? That's where they connect, and that's where we want to be. So that will grow here in 2021. The paving conference canceled for February. In lieu of that, we have implemented, and this first one starts next week, our top 10 virtual training sessions. Those who've been to the conference, we have all asphalt for 3 days, 60, 80 different presentations. This year we took what we considered the top 10, and starting Thursday, January 14th, and continuing 1 per week until the end of March, we'll be having 10 45 to 60-minute sessions at no cost. And here's what you can see the focus on. And then our 2 Asphalt Appreciation Day and Equipment Expos in April and the first week in May. The training sessions, the first one that we have is paving the U.S. Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, the home of the Minnesota Vikings. Work zone safety, women asphalt. We have some on construction, workforce development, maintenance, and hopefully each of you will consider you and or your team to be part of that. And then we want to continue to focus the services and the equipment provided by our equipment provider members of CAPA. And so on April 30th at Bandimere and at May 5th at Grand Junction, we'll be having 2 I Love Asphalt Appreciation Day and Equipment Expos. Free barbecue, come one, come all, and kick some tires, and hopefully we're more open as a culture in terms of the COVID restrictions, and we can enjoy seeing what the fares and wares are of our equipment providers at both of those events. And yes, there will be a paver runoff on the speedway. See which paver goes the fastest. No, I think there's a parking area off the speedway where we'll be meeting. CAPA will continue our webinars. We have 14 planned, a variety of topics. We're tempering them back until the end of the top 10 virtual sessions by the conference, and they'll pick up more in the May through November time period. One thing that is a resource available to all is our short course in asphalt technology. Tom Clayton does this at your facility, how you want it, where you want it, when you want it, and what you want it on. And we've done them as formal as PowerPoint at the Cheyenne Mountain Resort with 3-ring binders and full day, to the back of the shop with Spanish interpretation, to the crews to focus strictly on one specific issue: joints or smoothness or density or tough mixes or cold weather paving. But Tom is available to continue to put these on at your discretion. I'd encourage you to sign up early as the calendar gets full here in the March time period as those crew level people come back to work. And as Mike mentioned earlier, is the Asphalt Lunch and Learn. It could be very technical, maintenance orientated, or very high level engineering orientated, where we bring in the pizza and share on any of the topics as listed here, or at the management level with respect to pavement management, asset management, or those programmatic issues that we have. Rounding up the corner here, the last few minutes, we'll have a couple of minutes for questions if anyone has one. I think there's a number of very good reasons why over 90% of all pavements are asphalt. And whether it is the smooth, quiet ride, the fast construction, or it's the perpetual pavement nature, initial cost, competitive life cycle, we're very proud of our industry. We're proud of the work they do. We're proud of who they are and how they represent us. And we're proud to be a resource and a support for the industry and our agency partners as well. So with that, I thank you for being part of this presentation today. This presentation and the documents that we referenced will be available from our website if it isn't already. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Tom and see if there's any questions in the chat window, or open it up if you want to unmute anyone and see if there's any questions as we complete our session here today.
No questions. One comment from Mr. Peterson right across the highway here. Alan, thank you for your great information. Wishing you all a happy and prosperous New Year. The only comment, Tom, to back up on your comment about the presentation, it is available on the CAPA website right now as we speak if anybody wants to go get it. You can look on the homepage on the top right column there. There is links. It's also in the library, so you'd go to the resource tab, library, and it's the top item in the library. So all of the documents that Tom referenced and the presentation in PDF format are available on the CAPA website right now. They're up and ready to go. This webinar has been recorded. Once I get the information back from our web provider, I will then put the recorded version up in the recorded or archived webinar section under the RMAEC tab, the Rocky Mountain Asphalt Education Center tab. It will go up there, and I will put a link to it also in the library under that 2021 forecast. So no other comments. Just
maybe one comment.
Oh, wait, I got one. Wait a minute. Scott Sonart asks, can you talk about the impacts from 25 years of the use of mag chloride on the white pavement on concrete or on the binder? Scott, were you referring to the binder or were you referring to concrete? You can unmute yourself, Scott. Or I'll unmute you. Nope, you don't have a... There you go. Scott, you're unmuted.
Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, just mostly on the impact of both. I know there was big concern about mag chloride on the use of concrete back in the day, and with the use on asphalt, has the asphalt industry been able to kind of overtake that with maybe salt issues on concrete?
Mike Skinner, any comments?
Thanks, Scott. I'm not aware. Clayton, jump in on this one too. That at least from the contract side on the maintenance side, that anything that's changed as far as the spec requirements for materials that are required, that have required any kind of change. But I know on the performance side of it, Scott, you and I have gone way back on that. there have been some ongoing studies of the performance of mag chloride as an salt enhancer to that, and the performance. I don't stay that current on the research side of that, on the white side of it. So, are you aware of anything more current that's coming out of CDOT on that, Scott?
No, not that I know of. It's just
Yeah.
I know it was a huge thing, back in the Glenwood days, and now that it just memory serves me, it's about 20, 25 years in, maybe less than 25, but something to monitor for sure, because obviously the impacts of salt on concrete. So
I'll add in a little bit. I know that NCAT either has completed or was working on a study that talked about the effects of mag chloride on both asphalt and concrete, and I did see an advanced kind of, not a copy of that, but some information from that, and it did talk about how the mag chloride attacks the cementitious portions of a concrete, and the biggest effects in the asphalt world were that it would splash off and it was harming some of the adjacent vegetation, but had very little effect on the asphalt product itself. So I will see if I can't find more about that, but I know that was a study that was out there. And again, I don't know if it's been published, or even who the PI was on it down at NCAT.
But I think as a wrap up, Scott, that issue has just quieted down significantly from what we were talking about back in the day with the Glenwood Canyon. But I'll keep my ears open if something pops up.
Thanks. Appreciate it, guys. If you need any help, maybe doing some research on that, I'd be happy to help.
You're hired. No charge.
If one thing I would request of each of the attendees is, as you log off, there's an opportunity to provide feedback. That is very valuable to us as we update, expand, reduce any element of this presentation, or provide additional resources to do with the information there of what was provided. So if you could take the time to provide us any feedback that would be helpful to make it better or change or update it for next time, that would be helpful, as well as any comments on the upcoming webinars that you have. Tom?
My last comment, and then we're pushing an hour and a half here, and I know it's a long time for people to sit in one of these, but Tom mentioned our I Love Asphalt Equipment Expos and equipment days and expos, Bandimere, Mesa County Fairgrounds for the Western Slope people with the free lunch. Registration is available for those at the conference website, the acronym rmaecs.org. In order to get the lunch, you've got to pre-register for those. And equipment vendors, any of you that are on the line that want to show your equipment and or products or services, not just equipment, but we had all the booths around the outside of the conference as well, and anybody that wants to be there, we're happy to have you there. I'm going to push back to Mike Skinner to talk for about 10 seconds or 20 seconds on the award program.
All the awards scores are in, so letters will be going out here in the next 10 days or so, notifying our winners that they've won an award, and then that'll have the details and information about the awards luncheon that will follow in February. So the competition this year has been phenomenal. It is hyper competitive this year.
The last thing I'd say is that we're sorry that we're not putting a conference on. There are a few people who've been to all 47 conferences, and we have our gift certificates to the steakhouse for you, and just our way of saying sorry that we're not having a conference. So those who have been to all 47 conferences, come on in and we'll get you that gift certificate.
But you have to show proof that you were at all 47 to get those certificates. That's the only way you get it. You have to show absolute proof.
Yeah.
All right, I want to thank everybody again for being on. And as Tom said, as you're clicking out today, a pop-up survey will come on. Please take a moment to fill it out. It's only 4 or 5 questions. Stoey Streepy, thank you for your comment. We do appreciate that. and we appreciate being able to work with you up there in Clear Creek County. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Look for our other stuff that's coming up. Everybody be safe. We hope to see a lot of you either on February 25th at our award luncheon, April 30th at Bandimere, or for those of you on the other side of the mountain, May 5th at the Mesa County Fairgrounds. Everybody have a great day. Thank you very much.